If there is one thing the British monarchy does better than anyone, it is documentation. The royal family does not simply live its history, it records it, curates it, archives it, and presents it to the world with the precision of a centuries-old institution obsessed with legacy. Every royal baby is introduced through ceremony, a framed birth notice on a golden easel outside Buckingham Palace, a meticulously staged christening portrait, a place in the court circular, and a name inscribed in the official registry. It is tradition, but more importantly, it is protocol, a record of bloodline continuity that stretches back through generations. That is why the complete absence of Archie and Lilibet from every formal royal archive became one of the most whispered about inconsistencies in modern royal history. This wasn't because anyone expected the children to play public roles, but because the monarchy never forgets to file its own. Royal births are not casual events, they are historical entries. And yet, when archivists and royal analysts began reviewing the official documents, something unusual, almost unheard of, became apparent. The Sussex children appeared nowhere. There were no official christening portraits, no formal family photographs that included them in the royal lineup, and no official entries that matched the standards upheld for decades. Nothing. This story of the missing heirs, the palace's deafening silence, and the quiet war fought through bureaucracy is more shocking than any public scandal. Before we dive deep into the evidence, the rules, and the alleged meltdowns, it would mean the world to us here at the Ruby Report if you would hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss how the monarchy wielded its most powerful weapon, silence. At first, people brushed it off as the Sussexes' preference for privacy, a narrative that Meghan and Harry often leaned on. But palace insiders quietly noted that privacy has never meant complete absence from the record. Even the most sheltered royal children, like Princess Anne's children or the Wessex kids in their early years, all had their places recorded. Quietly, yes, but visibly. Archie and Lilibet were not quietly included, they were simply absent. And that is when the questions turned sharper. Why were they missing from the annual royal family portraits, even in group shots where entire branches of the family were acknowledged? Why did palace staff members allegedly avert their eyes or change the subject when asked about the children in passing? Why did those familiar, orchestrated family moments suddenly include everyone except Harry's side? The palace still refused to speak, but this is the part the public eventually understood. Silence becomes suspicious when it surrounds something that is normally routine. In a family that documents its history with almost obsessive discipline, two missing entries say more than any statement ever could. The absence whispered about in corridors and dissected online became the first real signal that something deeper was unfolding behind the palace walls. To understand why Buckingham Palace stayed silent on Archie and Lilibet, you have to understand one immutable fact about the monarchy. It runs on rules older than most countries themselves. This isn't just about etiquette or photo ops. This is centuries of law, precedent, and rigid tradition designed to safeguard the family, its lineage, and above all, its image. Under these rules, to be considered a prince or princess with a place in the line of succession, a child must meet several non-negotiable requirements. First, they must be born into the legitimate royal bloodline. Second, their birth must be formally recorded and recognized by the palace. And third, they must be baptized in the Church of England. Miss one of these, and regardless of DNA or public attention, you are not considered royal in the eyes of the institution. Period. For decades, these rules were sacrosanct. Entire lives and historical records have depended on them. Children like George, Charlotte, and Louis were not only born into privilege, their identities were cemented in ink, official seals, and centuries-old registries. Every royal knew it, and every palace clerk enforced it. Then came Harry and Meghan. Suddenly, a modern love story collided with rigid, ancient tradition. The Sussex children were born outside the kingdom, in a culture that emphasizes celebrity over ceremony. Documents were inconsistently filed. Baptisms happened privately away from Church of England oversight, and palace recognition was, at best, murky. The rules themselves had not changed, but for the first time in modern history, A branch of the royal family appeared to be sidestepping them. And the institution did what it always does when tradition is challenged. It ignored the public narrative and let its silent actions speak. When Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor entered the world in May 2019, at first glance, it seemed like a storybook royal birth. Proud parents, smiling grandparents, and a flurry of social media buzz. But beneath the surface, the first unsettling cracks in the Sussex narrative were quietly forming. The moment that sent ripples through royal circles wasn't in public, but in the paperwork. The official birth certificate, which should have been a simple archival formality, became a battleground of control and identity. Royal observers later noticed subtle yet significant changes made to the document. Meghan's name, expected to appear plainly as Rachel Meghan Markle, the child's mother, was replaced with her formal title, Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. To an outsider, it might seem trivial, but to palace insiders, this was a massive red flag. Altering a royal birth certificate is not something done lightly. In royal culture, it signals disagreement, intervention, and, in extreme cases, a questioning of legitimacy. Historians and archivists immediately sensed the tension. The document no longer just recorded a birth, it had become a political statement. Why would the palace allow a birth certificate to be rewritten? Why replace a mother's name with a title? Was this a subtle rejection of Meghan, a statement about her place in the hierarchy, or even more explosively, a signal about the child's official status? To the casual observer, it was a bureaucratic blip. To those who understood palace protocol, it was the first clear crack in the facade, the moment when Meghan and Harry's post-royal narrative collided with centuries of immutable tradition. The palace didn't need to speak. The alteration itself was loud enough. Archie's birth, meant to be a joyful announcement, had already stirred whispers, fueling speculation that would only grow louder with time. When Lilibet Diana was born in 2021, the world expected another carefully orchestrated royal spectacle. But nothing went as tradition demanded. There was no royal doctor on call, no palace staff documenting the moment, no official easel announcements, and not even the faintest whisper from the court circular. Instead, the world learned about the birth via a press release issued from California, the kind you'd expect from Hollywood celebrities, not a royal family that has spent centuries perfecting ceremony and pageantry. To Buckingham Palace, the event might as well have been invisible. No records were filed in the UK, no official announcements were made, and there was no inclusion in the official lineage. In the palace's eyes, if your birth isn't recorded according to protocol, it doesn't exist within the formal structure. That's the cold, hard reality of the monarchy. Lilibet Diana entered the world, yes, but within the centuries-old framework that dictates succession and recognition, she simply didn't. Royal insiders whispered furiously. Some called it unprecedented, a deliberate severing of ties from tradition. But seasoned palace observers saw it differently. This wasn't just a matter of protocol, it was a rebuke. The absence of recognition sent a clear, unspoken message. Titles, bloodlines, and privilege are earned through adherence to centuries-old rules, not personal narrative or media strategy. Even the name itself, Lilibet Diana, a poignant nod to both Queen Elizabeth II and Princess Diana, could not force her into the formal royal record. She existed in public perception, but was invisible in the legal and ceremonial hierarchy. The palace's silence was deafening, and in that silence, a story of control, tradition, and quiet power was written, one that would define the Sussexes' relationship with royalty for years to come. The monarchy is not just a royal family, it is a centuries-old religious institution with rules that feel more like sacred law than mere tradition. Every prince, princess, and royal heir is tethered to the Church of England. Baptism isn't a casual ritual. It's the key that officially unlocks your royal status. It's a formality that transforms a child from merely being born into being recognized as part of the royal lineage, with all the privileges and responsibilities that entails. For Archie and Lilibet, this foundational step was quietly but decisively overlooked. Sources close to the Sussex household confirm that both children were baptized in private American ceremonies, entirely removed from the oversight of the Church of England. No palace chaplain officiated, no registry was updated in the UK, and no records of their baptisms exist within the church archives that have guided royal legitimacy for generations. Royal insiders say this was the true turning point, the moment the institution effectively drew a line in the sand. The rules aren't suggestions, they're ironclad. Without a Church of England baptism, a royal child's status is nullified in the eyes of the crown. No amount of media coverage, Netflix interviews, or public adoration could override centuries of protocol. In short, Archie and Lilibet were celebrated by the world, but were functionally invisible in the one place that truly matters for royal legitimacy. The gossip spread like wildfire. Royal watchers noted that official photos of family gatherings subtly excluded these milestone moments. Lilibet's birthday photos circulated on Instagram and in tabloids, but official palace records remained conspicuously empty. The palace's silence was deliberate, a clear signal that adherence to tradition outweighs public sentiment or celebrity influence. For Meghan and Harry, this wasn't merely procedural, it was deeply personal. Their children's very identities, their royalness, hinged on this one ritual. Without it, the entire narrative they had built began to crack. The palace, meanwhile, didn't need a press release. Their message was quiet, brutal, and effective. If you bypass the church, you bypass the monarchy itself. Behind the polished interviews and carefully staged public appearances, Prince Harry was reportedly making a series of desperate phone calls. He wasn't negotiating titles or charity appearances. He was a father fighting for recognition for his children. Sources close to the royal household say these calls were intense, repeated, and increasingly frustrated as Harry sought clarity on matters that, in his mind, should have been straightforward: inclusion, acknowledgement, and legitimacy within the royal lineage. Friends of the Sussexes claimed that Harry reached out directly to key palace figures, not as a prince trying to influence public perception, but as a parent hoping to secure the recognition he believed his children deserved. For Harry, the effect was deeply personal. Every unanswered plea reinforced a growing, painful reality. The palace was not prepared to bend tradition, even for a prince. One confidant described him as haunted by the silence, a man caught between love for his new family and the immutable rules of the institution he was born into. These private calls, however, fueled speculation within palace corridors. Staff noticed the prince's concern, whispered about his frustration, and watched the tension rise. In the press, the public saw only a smiling prince, but behind closed doors, the phone calls were a lifeline for a father navigating an institution unwilling to adapt. Each call, unanswered or politely declined, became another mark of the widening divide between the Sussexes and the monarchy. In the end, these desperate calls didn't change policy or alter tradition, but they revealed the human drama at the heart of royal protocol. When people think of palace drama, they imagine loud confrontations or headline-grabbing press conferences. But Buckingham Palace is rarely about theatrics. It's about control, subtlety, and timing. And nowhere was this more evident than in the silent, almost invisible disappearance of Archie and Lilibet from the royal registry. Instead of issuing a statement, the palace executed what insiders call a surgical approach. There was no announcement, no televised reprimand. Instead, the Sussex children simply never appeared where they should have, in the official line of succession, in ceremonial records, or in any documented palace roster. Archivists and palace insiders noticed the omissions first. The public, unaware, assumed it was an oversight. But in royal circles, an omission this precise is never accidental. Titles were withheld, recognition was withheld, and succession placement was completely absent. The method was brilliant in its cruelty. The children were not removed because they had never been officially entered. There was no paper trail to trace and no public battle to fight. By doing nothing, the palace avoided a direct confrontation while simultaneously asserting its ultimate authority. It sent a clear signal to Harry and Meghan that adherence to tradition and protocol outweighs sentiment. Of course, this quiet erasure had consequences. The media noticed the discrepancies. Analysts began comparing line of succession charts with public records. The public's curiosity morphed into full-blown suspicion, fueling endless rumor cycles about a quiet royal vendetta. Every unacknowledged registry entry became fuel for public debate and tabloid firestorms. The palace, by refusing to respond, had handed over control of the narrative to the public. The absence of acknowledgement was no longer just a procedural issue, it had become a scandal. Archie and Lilibet's absence wasn't just bureaucratic, it was symbolic, a silent message that tradition cannot be bypassed, and that even royal blood doesn't guarantee recognition without adherence to the rules. After years of this deafening quiet, Buckingham Palace finally made its move, not with a dramatic statement, but through a quiet update to the royal website. Adjustments were made to the line of succession, and the registry entries for Archie and Lilibet were simply not there. The rules, as they stand, are stark and unflinching. Archie and Lilibet, grandchildren of a king, now exist in a liminal space, visible to the world, beloved by their parents, yet absent in the formal annals of royal history. No official titles, no legal place in the line of succession. For a family that built its identity on tradition, this is a seismic statement that departure from the rules comes with irreversible consequences. Harry and Meghan likely believed they could step away from the institution yet maintain its privileges. That assumption has been thoroughly dismantled. The palace's quiet non-recognition proves that in this system, tradition trumps narrative, procedure trumps emotion, and institutional power transcends celebrity influence. This is not a personal attack. It is the monarchy enforcing its centuries-old code, and in doing so, reshaping the Sussex legacy forever.